So, hello there, my friends, and welcome back to the Infinite Screen. We're currently in the middle of building our top 10 sports movies of all time. This is part two of the episode, so if you haven't seen or heard part one, I reckon skipping out of here and skipping back to there. But a quick recap for those who have been with us. We've done 6 movies so far, including Robert Redford's The Natural, Requiem for a Heavyweight from 1962, the vivid Any Given Sunday, the Oliver Stone movie. We have a joint second place between Diego Maradona and Ronnie O'Sullivan, The Edge of Everything, two brilliantly moving sports documentaries. And at number one, we have The Peerless, The Hustler from 1961. So we're going to get back into the conversation now. Both Phil and I still have 2 movies to share that we think are candidates for the top 10. And also we get the chance to share some of our thoughts on the movies that didn't quite make it, which I think is particularly interesting for this category. We've already been talking about how sports movies are a flexible category, and we've definitely got some genre stretching ideas as we get into the second half. So we're going to come back to our near misses in a moment, but before that, one more choice from you, please, Phil. What have you got for us?
Okay, this is where I start to push back against the boundaries of what might conventionally be understood to be a sports film. I'm going to
Okay.
choose 2001's Brian Helgeland directed, Heath Ledger starring A Knight's Tale.
Okay.
The sport, of course, is jousting. Um, but it follows that classic underdog arc. It has a lot of the same tropes of the other sports movies. The pageantry of the sport, all of the colors, the fan experience, the way that it unites the upper and lower classes of society, and that kind of, and then the fashion and the glamour that surrounds the kind of the upper echelons of the sport. The camaraderie of the team. I think the Alan Tudyk and Mark Addy are absolutely brilliant as essentially the cornermen of Heath Ledger's Night. And the kind of the enthusiasm that they have, and then of course joined by Chaucer, played incredibly by Paul Bettany. You've got the epic opponent. You've basically got the played by Rufus Sewell, who's so horrifically awful. I mean, it's a brilliant Rufus Sewell performance, and yeah, you get that. He loses to Rufus Sewell early on. And then the rest of the film is him building back up. They have this antagonism, but they don't meet again on the jousting field until right at the end. And he's gone, by that point, he's been put through the ringer, not in such a dark way as The Hustler. It's all kind of little bit lighter and frothier and more uplifting. But of course, by the time he's there for the rematch, he can assert his superiority. Yeah, it's a really fun film. It has great pace to it. It deals with this question of course, historical anachronism, which I think from theatre making is something which I really enjoy playing with. And it's kind of, yeah, it creates everyone. I think it's a very interesting space. People are interested in like remixes of history, little what ifs, what if these attitudes or these elements of technology were available in a different time period. And to kind of, yeah, to take those tropes of modern mass marketed sports and apply them to jousting, I think is just fascinating. And the world around that they create, it feels kind of coherent. It feels very playful. Like, I don't know if you remember, there's a bit in the bar where they are doing all the kind of the football chants, but adapted to Helgoland. And yes, the is yeah, it's a really great playful film. And I mentioned him before. Paul Bettany plays the character Geoffrey Chaucer. This is nominally an adaptation of Geoffrey Chaucer's, or inspired by at least Geoffrey Chaucer's The Knight's Tale. It's not an adaptation of that in any way, and perhaps recognized by the fact that the title of this is A Knight's Tale rather than Chaucer's The Knight's Tale. But Chaucer plays a character, is present as a character in this. The idea is that the events of this film inspire Chaucer to then go off and write his story. But Paul Bettany is brilliant in this.
Like a wind from Goldland, he sweeps by, blown far from his homeland in search of glory and honor. We walk in the garden of his turbulence.
A silly little moment there, but yeah, I love the script of this film. I mean, just we walk in the garden of his turbulence. What a line! Later on, Paul Bettany is talking to the gamblers who've basically robbed him, and he says, "I will eviscerate you in fiction." And it's really, he's a brilliant character. But what he does, this role that he plays as the squire page slash MC, is that he weaponizes the common people, and that kind of comes back to a little bit what you were saying about the Maradona. That idea that the sport is this place which unites people from all different social classes and has that ability to just create shared identity and shared emotional investment. So yes, perhaps not your conventional sports film, but I think it fulfills all the functions of one.
I love this movie. It was great. It definitely is a sports movie. I was all ready to come in fighting and try and kick this into touch, but actually, the more I thought about it, it absolutely 100% follows every structural rule of a sports movie, and yes, and twists them in a really interesting way, and really does explore, yeah, as you say, our love of sports and sports culture. It's right there in the heart of the movie, isn't it? Whilst also being something else. So, very cool choice.
Absolutely. Thanks, mates. What have you got for us next?
Okay, so this is my penultimate choice. I am going to go for a movie that I know you love that is also stretching the boundaries of what is and isn't a sport. And I'm going to go for Rounders. So this is a movie that was released in 1998, directed by John Dahl. It's a gambling drama starring Matt Damon and Ed Norton, who are two best friends who are both poker hustlers, but of different styles and philosophies. I'm sure we'll come back to that in a moment. Also, of course, starring John Malkovich as the implausible big bad. We're definitely going to be coming back to that in a moment. But the basic story is it's set in New York's underground poker scene. You've got Mike McDermott, who's the Matt Damon character, who is a reformed poker player. Obviously, he's lost a load of money in a poker match and has tried to become a fully committed, squeaky clean law student. And he's gradually pulled back into the world of high stakes poker by his relationship with Ed Norton, who's his childhood friend, who's been in prison, is released from prison, and wants to go out and hustle. Turns out has a lot of debts and very little morality in pursuing how he closes those debts. So we see the story of Mike McDermott trying to help his friend escape from this financial trap, but also exploring his relationship with his talent, because he is clearly a very talented poker player who's had a big hit. And this movie kind of explores his relationship with his talent. Should he or should he not be playing poker? But it's a great movie. Is it a sports movie? Absolutely is the shape of a sports movie, in that it is about someone's relationship with their talent at playing a game. And it starts in one place, it subsides, and it is moving towards some kind of arc of triumph or overcoming the odds. And also really celebrates the game as well, and the intelligence and the guile of people who are great at playing that game and also great at hustling that game at the same time. So a movie that I love. I think it's definitely a sports movie, and I recommend this movie to a lot of people. It managed to slip past a lot of people when it came out, but I think has an enduring success as a kind of cult movie, and also a movie lots of people love, even if they don't know poker inside out. So yeah, what do you think about this? This is a sports movie, Phil.
I absolutely love this film. I discovered this film, I think, when I was living in Japan, and there was a bunch of us from different countries, English-speaking countries, America, Australia, South Africa, all over the place. that we came together for at different points during the year. And I struck up a friendship with this guy, American guy, who was a semi-pro poker player. And I think he put me onto this film. I think anybody who likes playing poker will love this film because the way that it treats the game itself is so good. Yeah, as you suggested, you've got the kind of the conflicting philosophies really between the Matt Damon character and the Ed Norton character on how to play the game. Ed Norton sees it as a playground, sees it as a place to hustle, sees it as a place to kind of manipulate and win by whatever means he can get away with. Whereas Matt Damon loves the game and he wants to play it as well and as honestly as he can. The it's an interesting in terms of like the treatment of the poker itself. It's an interesting counterpoint to my mind to Casino Royale, where they're playing the same version of poker. They're playing Texas Hold'em, and in Casino Royale, I remember when that film came out, there was all of this hoo-ha of like, oh, they give so much screen time to the game of poker, and it's rubbish. It's so rubbish. Like the film is good in other ways, but the treatment of poker in that film is so rubbish. It just kind of comes back to that old cliche of he's got better cards, therefore he wins. Whereas what this shows, I think Matt Damon's character even says it in the film. If this is a game of luck, and then, the same 4 or 5 players win the world championship every year. They must be the luckiest guys in America. It's not a game of luck. It's a game of skill, and it's incredible. Yes, ability to read people, and that it manages to capture that in this film, which I think is an incredible achievement. And Matt Damon and Ed Norton are both fantastic and fantastically engaging. Ed Norton feels like it was kind of at the perhaps I'm doing him a disservice, but the kind of the most diva-like phase of his career, maybe, as he was like on the up, receiving adulation from all corners, and before he was perhaps humbled. But he actually is quite restrained, I think, here, and he's it's nice to see him like more of a supporting character to Matt Damon. Yeah, lots. I
Yeah,
could
absolutely.
yeah, rant about how great this film is for hours.
Maybe we should do that another time.
Yes,
I
probably.
One thing I think you touch on really well, and we've come back to like the sport itself a few times, and I think there's always that fine line. I think, firstly, of how much you try and explain the sport. You can't give no explanation because we don't want to isolate anyone who hasn't spent hours playing 5 card Hold'em from understanding this game. But equally, when movies become an explanation of how a game works to people who aren't really that interested or very experienced, it does become quite tiresome. But I think people who direct these movies really well are great at giving you the information that you need to know, but not trying to do that thing you sometimes have to do. Let me explain the rules to everyone. So everyone has 2 cards. So it does as much as it can in that kind of more insidious way of sneaking some knowledge, but by getting to the essence of what the game is about. So it absolutely does explain, this is a game that is about decision making and about calculation and about psychology. So you understand what's at stake in poker without it having to be explained to you. So then the culmination is incredibly satisfying. It is, of course, satisfying in multiple ways, not least because of the unforgettable performance of John Malkovich as the big bad, with one of the most extraordinary accents that has ever been committed to the big screen.
Yes, I called this trope the epic opponent, and he is certainly an epic opponent. His presence in this film is huge. His character's name is Teddy KGB, and yes, he's a extraordinary kind of pastiche of a Russian gangster.
Good. Want a cookie? No.
I mean, it's such a kind of a gleefully indulgent performance that it's hard not to get swept up by it, but it is thoroughly preposterous.
You don't have the cards.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
I think his famous one is "Give that man his money."
Absolutely amazing. All right, brilliant. Rounders. Okay, where we've got rounders. Where would we put rounders in our list? Would you like a little recap, Phil?
Yes, please.
Okay, so at the moment, at the top we have the Hustler. Then we have Maradona and The Edge of Everything in joint second position. Then in fourth position we have Any Given Sunday. Then we have Requiem for a Heavyweight, and then we have The Natural. An interesting collection of movies. And
Mm.
we now to place A Knight's Tale and A Rounders in that order.
I think in terms of like purely personally, how much I like the film, I would say top half definitely for Rounders.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it may even be second on that list. I think.
I think it's probably second or fourth, definitely.
Yeah. So
Either
either above
above
or
or
below
below.
our
Or,
documentaries.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think one thing that's great about it is it really is when we say a sports movie, obviously we're interpreting that in helpfully flexible ways. But I think Rounders does the being an absolutely archetypal sports movie that gives you everything that you expect from that movie, whilst also giving you something totally different that's really dramatically rich and interesting. So yeah, for me, it's a great sports movie. Well, let's come back and have another little look when we've finished our list. But what about A Knight's Tale? This is the only choice we've made that isn't in some way dark, I would say. But I don't think that should
Yeah.
necessarily mean that it has to be poorly rated. It's okay to be happy sometimes. So where would
Yeah,
we put The Knight's Tale?
absolutely. It's a bit cheesy. It knows it's cheesy. It embraces that cheesiness. It's got a very kind of feel-good soundtrack. I mentioned that kind of anachronistic edge that you know you've got them all doing the Queen "We Will Rock You" as very early on, almost I think maybe right at the start of the film. David Bowie features prominently in it. It's got the kind of the romantic subplot, which is again just a it's just leading to the happy ending. You know he's going to get the girl. So it's very fun. I love the tone of it, but maybe not for me quite up there. Maybe around six-ish. Where would that put it?
Um, I think I would have to put it below Any Given Sunday. Where would you put it versus Requiem for a Heavyweight? I mean, two very different viewing experiences, it's fair to say.
Incredibly different. I mean, I would say probably I would be more inclined to go back to Knight's Tale, probably. It's a bit more stylish. It's a bit more fun. It's a bit more interesting,
Okay.
perhaps.
All right. So let's slide it in. That would put it at sixth in the current listing.
Okay.
So we've reached one of my favorite moments in these top tens. We're going to go have a little dive into the ones we didn't choose. So let's just take a moment to collect ourselves. And then, Phil, I'd love to hear no more than five-ish movies that you didn't choose. Right, Phil. So give me no more than five-ish movies that nearly made your list, but didn't quite make the cut.
All right then. Yes, I was agonizing right up to the last moment. And it's interesting that you mentioned that Knight's Tale is the only kind of fun one or uplifting one that made my choices. Of course, not giving away what my final choice is going to be. But I almost included Kingpin, which is the bowling comedy, which has a few of the classic tropes. It's got the mentor as the main character, fake out, similar to Color of Money. It's got the epic opponent. I mean, for me, the best thing about this film is Bill Murray's villainous role is just fantastic. So yeah, almost chose Kingpin. I almost chose Tin Cup, which is a Kevin Costner movie, which is not a great film. It's a very generic movie, but it's got a great moment in it, which is the has-been comeback story. So far, so conventional. But then when it comes to the final tournament, he basically messes up. He squanders his lead because there's one particular shot that he insists that he can make. And when he doesn't make it, he loses his lead, but he stubbornly refuses to choose another shot and he keeps repeating the same shot over and over again until he does actually make it. And so he's kind of got this kind of victory of spirit, perhaps, which is, yeah, it's just a nice kind of subversion. It's nicely unexpected, but still giving you that kind of that perhaps uh, wanted for sports movie pick me up. I almost chose, well, this film certainly has a reputation for being a classic sports movie, but I don't think either of us are choosing it. Cool Runnings. Uh,
Oh, I love Cool Runnings.
yeah, classic underdog story.
John
I,
Candy. Yeah, I can't. You can't beat a John Candy movie.
I also thought that obviously you mentioned that our choices are very much kind of dominated by American and British films. But there are some other great, crazy, amazing sports movies out there, such as Shaolin Soccer, which has aged somewhat. I did go back and look at it to see if I could include it in my top five. I feel like it has aged a bit, but it's a wonderfully bonkers, inventive film. And Lagan. Have you ever seen Lagan?
Oh no, I have heard about it. I haven't seen it. No, no.
It's like 3 hours long or something, but it's epic. It's the story of basically these kind of during the British Raj, the locals beating the British Empire at cricket, essentially. And but it's yeah, brilliant film. Especially if you're a fan of Bollywood musicals, I would certainly recommend it. And yes, also I'm very kind of conscious that our picks are very male centric. And Million Dollar Baby is an incredibly powerful sports film, very much in the tragedy camp. I was completely blindsided when I watched this film. I was expecting it. You know, the movie starts and I totally expected an uplifting underdog success story, and it is not that. It is a very dark film. It's the kind of film that I have total respect for as a piece of powerful filmmaking. I never want to watch it again.
Okay, that's a great list, Phil. I'll give you a couple of mine.
Yeah.
I realize there are whole genres that or subgenres that I've neglected. You touched on one of them, which is there are some really good sports comedy movies, which are just silly and super enjoyable. And probably I'd put in that category Dodgeball and Happy Gilmore. I think not going to make a case that they are perfect movies, but if you wanted a joyful way to spend 90 minutes, the combination of sports and comedy is a brilliant area, but I couldn't get them in the top 10 of anything. Another little subgenre that we've kind of ignored. We've tended towards some of these more individualistic movies, and obviously there are a lot of great movies which are team movies. And one of the movies that I really like that didn't quite make my list is Hoosiers, which is about Gene Hackman going to a rural Indiana high school basketball team and building a team and a team spirit. It does all of those things you'd expect it to do, but it also has Gene Hackman in it, and it also has Dennis Hopper in it. So really great movie. This is in lots of people's top 10 sports movies. I really, really like it, but it didn't quite make my list. In the category of more recent movies, I think a lot of our movies have either been a little bit older or kind of 90s or turn of the millennium movies. Recently, I think Marty Supreme is a really, really great movie. And also, like lots of our choices, a really interesting sports movie in which the sport is absolutely integral and it has the shape of a sports movie, but it doesn't have a neat ending. And yet the ending is very satisfying. So definitely of recent movies, that's worth a look. But there is another great documentary, well worth watching, called Fire in Babylon, which is essentially the same theme that you've described, but it's set in the West Indies. And it's about the amazing West Indies cricket team of the 1980s and effectively them turning the tools of imperial colonialism back on the English and going from being like the most mocked cricket team in the world to being the most dominant sports team that has probably ever existed in the history of any sport, the 1980s West Indies team. So I love that.
I have
And then it
actually
has
seen
one.
that one, Matthew. Yeah,
Oh, you've
that
seen
is
it?
a yeah, that is a really good film.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, great. There's some great characters in it as well, like Viv Richards and Colin Craft, and yeah, so many. Michael Holding, Whispering Death. Uh, Also, great voices. All these guys just have great voices, just incredibly powerful storytellers. And then one final cheat, which I thought about smuggling into the list, and then I retracted, I think wisely, The Big Lebowski, which I think ultimately is not, I will accept, is not a sports movie. And I had to accept is not a sports movie. But it is a movie that is totally anchored by the relationship of some people who play a sport together. Like it is kind of a bowling movie. Uh, and the shape of the bowling movie makes much more sense in a way than the shape of the detective movie that it also is. Yeah. And the heart of the movie is in the bowling lane. So, but it's not really a sports movie, is it? I didn't want to lead to any falling out and any controversy. So I retracted it.
I love the way that kind of the bowling gives these characters like mythic status. You've got they're basically complete losers, but on the bowling lane, they're kings, they're gods, they are, these much larger than life archetypes. And like the Jesus as well, he's like a registered sex offender. And yet on the lane, he is, this incredible character. It's got that kind of, really kind of, amazing world within a world.
All right. Okay. With no further ado, I would love to hear your final choice, Phil, before we get to our definitive, if somewhat eclectic ranking of the best 10 sports movies of all time. Where are you going to take us with your final choice?
Okay, Matthew. Well, with my final choice, this is perhaps my most ambitious interpretation of the category. I'm going to go for a film which is probably very few people would consider a sports movie. Yet I think perfectly occupies the shape of one and is also such an incredibly accomplished piece of filmmaking that yes, just an astonishingly good film that feels like to me it's a million times better than it has any right to be. It is 8 Mile, the Curtis Hanson directed, Eminem starring story of Rabbit, the wannabe battle rap champion, and his kind of all of his personal problems, and yeah, his kind of his basically down on his luck life, and rap to him is the one thing that gives him purpose. And we talked about aspiration, the importance of aspiration in these sports films. It gives him hope. It's the only thing that he can see as kind of pulling him out of the quagmire of his existence. Eminem proves a brilliant actor in this. Like he's gives such a strong performance. Yes, the screenplay is inspired by Eminem's own life, um, but that doesn't mean that he should be convincing in that role. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But how this kind of really occupies and fulfills the sporting tropes and requirements that we've chatted about over this conversation, it's structure-wise, it's perfectly there. It starts off with him losing, and then it's all in it's the big kind of come round to him regaining or kind of getting that opportunity to prove himself again. And this time, by virtue of what he's had to work through to find his way back to that opportunity, he has grown in stature, he's grown in spirit, and he totally dominates the situation. And that final performance is astonishing. It's absolutely brilliant. He doesn't just win, he completely takes apart, he dismantles the whole machinery of the sport, for want of a better word. He disrupts and dismantles how it's supposed to work. Slight spoiler here. He basically I'm sure the format of a battle rap. Each rapper takes an opportunity to mock, ridicule, and belittle the other one, and then the audience votes on who's the best. He completely takes the words out of his opponent's mouth by launching back at him all of the things, all of the insults or things that could be used to attack himself. And then when it comes that his opponent's turn to speak, he cannot even muster a word. Totally taken apart, and it's so brilliantly done. Of course, helped by the virtuoso rap ability of Eminem. I mean, yes, he is as impressive as he is as an actor. Obviously, as a rapper, he is just mind-blowingly formidable, awesome, amazing. And the other thing that I love about this film is it really is about the graft versus talent. He's got the talent, that's evident, but it's the graft that gets him back. And my detail about this film that I absolutely love, he's to get to basically to have the opportunity to compete in the rematch. He's had to pull in a favor to have someone to cover his shift at I think it's the steelworks that he works at. And he's won the comeback battle. His crew are there. They were like, right, we've got to go and celebrate. And he's like, no, I've got to go back and got to go back to work. And I've got to, relieve this guy who did me a solid by letting me. And it's just that shows his transformation of attitude, and that shows the growth that he's had. And it's a brilliantly fulfilling character moment. And yeah, it's just brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted. Everyone in this is great. Looks fantastic. Fantastic movie.
Yeah, I love it, Phil, and I think in a sense, whilst you have stretched the boundaries of what we might consider sport in lots of ways, that story shape you've described is probably the most satisfying. Certainly, like individual sports, it's the most satisfying narrative shape there is. That is only through the journey of having failed that you discover the skills, the character, the perspective that enables you to achieve greatness. And I think that's got to be, and which is kind of the same as The Hustler, or whether he's achieved greatness or not at the end of that movie is obviously slightly questionable. But it's that same thing of, this is the cycle that we have to go through as people, like particularly, if you are in that situation where you have an extraordinary talent, that's the journey that you have to go through to ascend to greatness rather than, proficiency or excellence. And in some ways, I think that is one of the most satisfying narratives. I think if it's about an individual, I think that's the most powerful narrative there is. I think if it's about a team, obviously these stories are often about selfishness, giving yourself up to the group. But those to me, like, those are the really primal, like sports movie or sports story narratives. And when it's done well, in a way that feels like real and doesn't just feel like a parable, it feels like an actual person story. I think it's such a powerful thing to experience. I love the evocation of the location in this movie as well. Like, you really get a sense of what it's like living there, what it feels like, kind of the grime and the pain and the difficulty of it, but also the sense of community that is there.
Yes, well, that
lean
is
into it.
the title of the film, isn't it? 8 Mile refers to the district of San Diego where he lives.
And I agree, Eminem is absolutely extraordinary in this movie. And yeah, maybe it would have been great to see more of him, but I guess it's difficult to think of where he would have been as compelling as he was in this movie. I'm going to definitely take it as a sports movie, and I think it's right up there, Phil. I think it's right up there. Where would you squeeze it in if you had to squeeze it in? Is it better than The Hustler?
Is it better than The Hustler? Oof. I mean, it feels indebted to The Hustler, even if not directly. Um, and it kind of emulates so kind of precisely in a way that the shape of The Hustler, doesn't it? But maybe just under The Hustler. What do you think?
I think under The Hustler, but above Rounders.
Okay.
And I think, as I said, we've found so many interesting movies that have these different interesting lenses on the shape of the sports movie. But this is like archetypal sports movie. It gives you the thing that you most want from that, and what really is the purpose of this kind of storytelling. I think it unbelievably nails that. So I'm going to happily nestle it at number 2, Phil. And this is a movie that I loved, and I feel like I need to watch it again.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that top 9 so far, Matthew. So, I mean, what have you saved to last? Please enlighten us.
I mean, I really tried to find something really, really surprising, but I have come down to, we started with The Hustler, and I've come down to at the end another one of those movies that for me sits at that level. But I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting to do a bit more build up. So you just gave us a movie that isn't about sport, but is very, very clearly identifiably a sports movie in every other respect. Like in
Well, and
terms of
also,
its,
if you kind of take that idea that sport is codified conflict,
yeah,
or then the rap battle is totally that.
yeah, absolutely. It's that in a much purer way than, yeah, I don't know, bowls or maybe cricket. Cricket really isn't combat, actually. It's an interesting thing about cricket. Anyway, let's not talk about cricket right now. So I'm going to talk about a movie that I think is one of my favorite movies of all time. But when you look at this movie, it's sometimes quite difficult to think, why is it such a good movie? Why is it enjoyable when in lots of respects it's kind of torture? So my final choice is going to be 1980's Raging Bull.
I'm the best. And I can take him more than anybody.
You're dead. You're married. Leave the young girls for me.
There's no way I'm going down. I don't go down for nobody.
What is it with him? Why does he have to make it so hard on himself?
If you beat Sugar Ray, you'll get a shot at the title. You feel that way?
There's no one else around who wants to fight me. They're all afraid.
I've done a lot of bad things, Joey. Maybe it's coming back to me.
So you've seen Raging Bull, but there might be some people here who haven't seen Raging Bull. So directed by Martin Scorsese. It's entirely filmed in black and white, and it's a boxing movie starring Robert De Niro as middleweight boxer Jake LaMotta, alongside Joe Pesci, who plays his long-suffering brother and manager, and also Kathy Moriarty as his even more long-suffering wife. This is based on Jake LaMotta's memoir, and it kind of charts this shape, which starts as a classic sports movie trajectory, kind of up and comer on the way, on the brink of trying to break through, being held back by kind of corruption and commercialism in the sport, but really trying to ascend to greatness. And then we see a little bit more of that journey. We see him breaking through. We see him winning fights. This incredibly powerful man who can just take unbelievable amounts of punishment. So it feels like what we're seeing is Rocky, but we're not seeing Rocky. We are seeing someone descend into jealousy and rage and self-destructive behavior, and see that tear apart his career, and then his relationship with his brother, his relationship with his wife. We see him descend into this kind of seedy life of being a nightclub MC and compere, and then this kind of small semi-recovery at the end. But we see, you know, this incredible physical transformation in this person who started out as this incredibly lean, powerful fighter who just ends up as this kind of bloated mess, searching for meaning but never really able to find it, trying to understand what's happened to him, struggling to get his head around it. So that is the story of Raging Bull, but interspersed with some of the most incredibly immersive and gritty and violent depictions of boxing, but in a way that always feels very cinematic, very heightened. Like the black and white really helps with this. So you get a real sense of the gladiatorial battle, the incredible violence that exists in boxing, whilst also really following the journey of what it is to be that person, the person who is that instrument of violence for their profession, but has to deal with being an instrument of violence really in their own life. So yeah, an extraordinary film, definitely very much rooted in the world of sport, but absolutely not a conventional sports movie in any way whatsoever. So Phil, you've seen Raging Bull. What do you think about Raging Bull appearing in our top 10 sports movies?
Yes, indeed. I think what's interesting is yes, the plot and the arcs are yes, as you say, it seems like it's so far so conventional, and then it doesn't kind of fulfill those expectations. And so many of our other choices seem to be almost attempts to either like perfect that character arc of the sports protagonist, or to subvert it, but yeah, based on sticking as closely to it in other ways. Whereas this feels like a real departure from that, and maybe partially because it's based on a real life of Jake LaMotta, it has that added kind of nuance and that realism, and also because it's got such an epic time frame that it manages to wrap itself around. That if yeah, it feels more real in a way, even though of course it is mythologized and of course it is kind of artistically adapted and contrived, and by virtue of it being shot in that black and white as well. It is both mythic and grounded at the same time. Of course, anchored by a phenomenal performance by Bobby De Niro, and surrounded by brilliant performances. It's what I love about this film is the kind of that sense of the physicality and the sense of physical damage, and like his kind of his weight. Like so, yeah. This is one of the films where perhaps Robert De Niro was at his most method, certainly in terms of gaining and losing weight. So the film kind of ping pongs between him being like preparing for a fight and not, and then his kind of after post career. So yeah, Robert De Niro's weight is going up and down, and then that's that is it Sonny Liston that he's fighting in that particular scene where he says, "Oh,
Oh no,
Ray,
Sugar Ray Robinson. Yeah,
Sugar Ray Robinson, yeah,
You never
you
got me
never
down, Ray.
yeah,
Never
of
got me
course,
down,
of
Ray.
course." That is the kind of that classic scene. That's kind of a little bit like that Tin Cup scene insofar as
Yeah.
he somehow gets a what feels like a moral victory on some level, but not by winning the game or winning the match. Yeah, really kind of uncomfortable to watch, but thrilling. It's a classic film, and
Yeah.
Scorsese at his most skillful.
Well, I think what's interesting about this movie, I've got a take on this movie that I'm going to come back to in a second. I'm going to show you a little clip of it, and then I've got a hot or controversial take on it. But I think what's interesting and different about this movie versus all the other movies that we've talked about today, whether they're fictional, in fact, or documentaries, all the other films put these people on a pedestal and kind of is examining these small gaps between goodness and greatness, or between fully mastering your art or just being a good practitioner of it, or between the near perfection of sport and the corruption, a little bit of corruption underneath it. I think this is a much, much more basic and primal film than that, which is about, what is it to be a man, or a human, really. There's so much animalistic imagery and language in this film, and it's really exploring like Jake LaMotta's attempt just to be a man with dignity and to learn some form of self-control, but the feeling of the impossibility of doing that. So it's almost operating at a much more basic level, and you think you're seeing a movie about what is it to be great, but Jake's journey is not really to try and be great. It's like just to try and be a human being that can hold things together, that can be not overwhelmed by kind of animal impulses, by violence, by anger, by rage. And really, that isn't generally what sports movies are about. They're generally about exploring greatness, what's required for greatness. This is much more getting to the. It's a much more. I mean, in a sense, it's a much more pessimistic film. It's about a much more about how can you get the resilience and the degree of self-control to keep going and try to keep your life on some kind of track when everything seems to be falling apart and running away from you, which I think almost puts it, I think, outside of this entire category. Apart from that, boxing specifically is the perfect way to explore that, because it is where we're trying to dignify and elevate and celebrate human achievement and craft and character, but around something which fundamentally is a very, very animalistic impulse to inflict violence, to survive violence. So it's very, very uncomfortable, really, to think about it. And you see yourself in the crowd and think, God, what is it to be a part of this crowd that puts these people in the middle and makes them perform and commit these physical acts really for our entertainment and our edification? But, you know, I like watching boxing. And the boxing's not quite now what it was in the time of Raging Bull, but yeah, really gets to the heart of like, what is this all about, where we put these people at the center of our attention and turn them into tools for our entertainment, and what does that mean for their lives? I think it's a bit pessimistic and a bit deep, but quite a powerful thing to watch.
I think absolutely, and that kind of suggests themes of exploitation, which certainly are present in some of our other choices as well, such as Requiem for a Heavyweight and The Hustler, and kind of almost the fake or the very fragile nature of such an aspirational avenue. It's I think often, well, with on the waterfront as well, like boxing, I could have been a contender. It's this kind of the last refuge for somebody who doesn't have any other social options, isn't it? It is so in so many of those 60s films, that kind of for the really kind of struggling working class, and things like being a basketball star for perhaps more contemporary Black Americans who might not otherwise feel kind of they've got any social options. That's really kind of, it offers an avenue to aspiration, but it's such a fragile and potentially deceptive one.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is in this movie in spades. I think what's ultimately I find fascinating about it, which I think makes it quite a high work of art versus some of the other things we've discussed, which doesn't necessarily make it better at doing what it's doing, but it really ends up turning the frame round on us, but not entirely in a negative way. Because I think what this film does, firstly, it does all the things you've described. It makes us question, why are we turning these people into ostensible heroes and then kind of using them as tools of our own dreams or our aspirations, which they may be totally unprepared for, unsuited for, which I think is really what you see with Jake LaMotta. But on the other hand, he's also saying, but we do find a lot of meaning in these stories. That doesn't mean that these people themselves are perfect heroes or perfect role models, but there is something about watching these stories, whether it's the movies or watching real life, we find a lot of meaning in this. So even if the story itself is not meaningful, we learn a lot from looking at it. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this specific movie, because the story of its production is a story of people being asked to tell the story and deciding they didn't really want to, and then finding themselves doing it. So Robert De Niro reading the book and kind of really not liking it very much, and then finding himself reading again and becoming obsessed with this story. And then Scorsese really going, do I really want to make a movie about this guy? And yet somehow the process of making this movie kind of turned his life around and helped him to rediscover meaning. So there's something about the process of this which has had a magnetic effect on people. And I think maybe that is like, looking at other people's stories, staring deeply into the heart of them, you find some kind of meaning.
It wasn't him, Charlie, it was you. You remember that night at the Garden? You came down my dressing room and you said, "Kid, this ain't your night. We're going for the price on Wilson." Remember that? This ain't your night. My night. I could have taken Wilson apart that night. So what happens? He gets a title shot outdoors in a ballpark, and what do I get? A one-way ticket to Palookaville. I was never no good after that night, Charlie. It was like a peak you reach, and then it's downhill. It was you, Charlie. You was my brother. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have looked out for me just a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit, instead of making me take them dice for the short end money. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It was you, Charlie. It was you, Charlie.
How you doing, Jake?
Everything all right?
Yeah.
Ready?
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Need anything?
Nah,
You sure?
I'm sure. A lot of people out there.
Yeah, it's crowded.
So, what a weird way that is to end a movie.
Yeah.
Not just the Robert De Niro scene, but then those words that go up on the screen at the end of that film. I've spent a lot of time thinking about those words and what that's all about. A lot of people think that this movie is a redemption movie, and that what we see at the end is some kind of redemption for Jake LaMotta. But I'm not convinced by that at all. You see him looking in the mirror, slightly detached, and the words he's saying are still somehow blaming, or he's quoting along the water on the waterfront, but he's almost blaming his brother for what went wrong in his career. Which, if you've seen this film, his brother Joe Pesci does nothing but try and help him in every way possible. Then that quote on the screen at the end.
The fact though that he's saying that to the mirror is like he's saying it to himself.
He should have looked after himself. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's how I read that. And it's very interesting on lots of levels because of course it's just directly comparing De Niro with Brando as kind of successors of the same kind of tradition of acting, or certainly kind of seen as the successive champions of method acting, and that way of kind of perhaps championing the underdog coming from a similar social class and situation. It's very much framing the film as a film, but then it's very kind of almost feels like cinema verite. It feels like Godard with the kind of, you could hear the traffic noise in the background and the camera just stays where it was framed perfectly. He gets up and moves around and the camera just stays there, and you get but it's so kind of his it's so kind of restrained. His performance is brilliant, isn't it? Like it's doesn't give anything away, and that kind of matter of factness. It's like he understands on some level what has happened, but he doesn't feel sorry for himself. He's kind of got this incredible resilience that transcends that in a way.
Yes, but I think that's exactly the right word. It's resilience. Because what he also hasn't done is reached some point of great illumination or understanding. Like, he's got some perspective on what's happened, and he endures and he continues. And that's why I find that the weird quotation that comes up afterwards, that's why I find it so interesting, in that it's not trying to give this character an amazing redemption arc. It's not saying, look, he triumphed over his problems. He's saying that he continues to be a complicated, somewhat reflective, but not totally elevated person who's kind of, he's endured, he understands what he's endured, but he hasn't miraculously become a better person. He hasn't climbed the mountain of overcoming his character flaws. He's still a sinner, but looking at him and understanding his life still gives you a lot. Like, you can see him and go, yes, he's very flawed, but that's not a reason not to look at him and not to understand him and not to try and be in his world.
I feel like the choice of that kind of that Bible quote there, with the Pharisees wanting the formerly blind person that they're talking to frame it in moral terms as, is he a sinner or isn't he? And him saying basically, not being drawn into the moral question.
Yeah, not being drawn in.
It's not about being a sinner or not being a sinner. It's about, like you say, it's about the infinite nuances and complexities of being a human being. And and he's just kind of reacted in yeah, quite kind of
Yeah.
animalistic ways and at times and subconscious ways, and
Yeah.
mm,
But our job is not to judge in that sense.
yeah,
Certainly not our job in the context of story. Like, the point of the story is to understand him. It's not to decide whether he was good or bad.
yeah,
Lots of sports movies want to make that quite simple for you to go at the end. Well, at the end, he was a hero because he did X, Y, Z, and to be stories of heroes. And I think it's like, this is an interesting kind of story that's not the conclusion of the story. The conclusion of the story is that is who he was. We're
yeah.
also complicit in who he was. There's a lot we can learn from that. But ultimately, he's not a hero, and he's not someone to be cast aside. He's a person who lived that life. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Very peculiar. Anyway, where'd you put it in a list of the top 10 sports
Well,
movies?
maybe it goes in at number one. Maybe it is.
Do you
Yeah.
think?
I think it just has that kind of those just extra levels of ambiguity, but really nicely framed ambiguity, and it it does it all, doesn't it? It mythologizes it whilst keeping it grounded. It's convincing, but it's also has these moments of incredible transcendence and kind of artificially elevated reality. It's a brilliant piece of filmmaking. Um, Great performances. Yeah,
Yeah, I agreed. I could make the case for it sitting either above or below The Hustler, depending on my level of romanticism and positivity on any given day. But I think ultimately it's greater. And I guess I mentioned Westerns at the beginning. I think it's a little bit like how we might do Westerns one day, so I shouldn't give my thoughts away. But like something like The Searchers as a Western, it's ultimately the Western that undermines all Westerns, and therefore gives you the most perspective on what that kind of story is all about. And I feel like that with Raging Bull, that kind of having that story in my mind makes you look at all the other stories and really question, why am I drawn to those stories? Why do I feel about those stories the way I do? Which I guess is like maybe that mark of greatness, is it making you
brilliant.
deeply question
Yes.
all the precepts. Anyway, that's
I
a
like
good place
it.
to end, don't you think, Phil?
The Searchers of Sports Movies,
The
indeed.
Searchers of Sports
Come on,
Movies.
give us then the
Okay.
full rundown.
All right, I will give you the final rundown of the top 10 sports movies. At number 10, The Natural. At number 9, Requiem for a Heavyweight. At number 8, A Knight's Tale. At number 7, Any Given Sunday. We then have a documentary joint fifth, Maradona and Edge of Everything. At 4th, we have Rounders. At number 3, 8 Mile. Great choice. Thank you, Phil. At number 2, The Hustler. And at number 1, Raging Bull. Are you happy with that list?
I don't know whether I'd want to swap A Knight's Tale and Requiem for a Heavyweight on reflection, but at any rate, I'm broadly happy, and I think it's a
Broadly
great
happy.
selection of films.
I think it's a really interesting list, and I think lots of entry points for exploration. So thank you very much, Phil, for helping to put together the Infinite Screen top 10 sports movies. That's our list. I'm sure lots of people who hear this would disagree with the ordering, would be enraged by the flexibility with which we've judged the idea of a sports movie, or may have brilliant ideas that we've missed that should go straight in at number 1. So if you do, please do comment and let us know. We can take it. We're contenders.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And please tell us of all of the obvious ones we've forgotten about, and tell us what unseasoned idiots we are, especially myself, in terms of the sports movie field.
If you like this, please subscribe to these channels, recommend this to your friends who are sports movie buffs. Next time we will be back together to do something a little bit different. We're going to do something a bit reflective. Yeah. And we're going to have, Phil and I are going to have a think about a movie that we have very memorably watched together. And we're going to reflect on where we were then, where we are now, this movie, what it's meant to us. Does it hold up? It's going to be a moment to reflect, but also to talk about an absolutely brilliant movie, because that movie is No Country for Old Men. So that will be our next little episode. Thank you very much for sticking with us through this epic journey through sports movies. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon.